The world's strongest swordsman. If you're not a watcher of One Piece and if you've ever wondered where that big old scar on Zoro's chest came from, it's because of this being known as Mihawk giving it to him a permanent scar. When it comes to using a blade, narratively speaking, in the One Piece world, it's even stated by the narrator he's the world's strongest swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk. Mentioned here to be the world's strongest. World's greatest swordsman, duh. You know the mightiest pirate, Gold Roger. You know he had a first mate known as Rayleigh. You know Rayleigh's still around. Although he's a lot older, he's still absurdly strong. Strong enough to slugfest with beings at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to fighters in the military. Like Kizaru, a being that's literally made of actual light, and Rayleigh's able to slugfest it with. Despite Rayleigh being older, but he's still strong, even in current times, Mihawk is still, in narrative, above him in swordplay, so it kind of gives you way more perspective on Mihawk's power and swordsmanship. I mean, his eyes do look crazy. So I thought it would be fitting to analyze how strong he is. He may lack appearances, but he has strong narrative and writer intent on his side, so you can't argue with that. Although we don't see how he got strong because he lacked screen time. He's not the main character, but of course he was a child at one point, and throughout the years we could assume he's gotten stronger as time went by, climbing the ranks, getting older, gaining experience to eventually to become the world's strongest swordsman. Due to his status and rank, there's a couple things that you have to be. There's techniques you have to know to be considered one of the strongest beings in the One Piece universe. There's this technique known as Haki. It's like this universe's version of chakra, like from Naruto, and Ki from Dragon Ball Z. They can use their inner energy, or one could say aura, manifested around their weapons to increase their durability or amplify the strikes of the weapon they're holding, or just amplify their punches, strikes in general. This is called ornament Haki. Mihawk has this. Stuff like this helps a swordsman be able to take better care of his sword. Matter of fact, one of the main characters, Zoro, the second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates, the only reason he even knows Haki is because Mihawk taught him how to do this. Saying if you would have infused his swords with a Haki, they wouldn't have broken. So it lets you know how crazy Haki can be. When you see characters in One Piece use Haki, you usually see their body or limbs turn black. That's just how the animators decided to animate it. So when it comes to Haki, using his inner energy outwardly on his weapon, his knowledge on Haki is the reason why his weapon is a black blade. He even says every weapon can be turned into a black blade like his. He can even use small knives. And not to mention, in the lore, there's a lot of powerful swords in this world, but Mihawk apparently has the world's strongest sword as well, on top of him being the greatest swordsman. It's fitting. He's one of the main characters, in-game type characters, so you know anytime there's a character that's an in-game character, you know they're a beast. That's kind of how Mihawk is to Zoro, which is probably why he lacks appearances. Zoro's making progress throughout the time, you know. So a good way to understand Mihawk's power is that whatever Zoro can do, one could say Mihawk can do better when it comes to physical strength attributes as well. Up until this point in the story, it's confirmed that Mihawk is way above Zoro, and this is the type of stuff Zoro can do. When it comes to his raw strength, Zoro is a superhuman swordsman that can lift entire buildings. Despite all of this madness, when Zoro is using his super strength and swordplay put together, charging against Mihawk, Mihawk stops him with a little small knife with one arm while Zoro's using both. You can see the strain in Zoro's arms, like you can see the veins, he's really trying. This is the same guy that can lift a house or a freaking building, so off gate you can get an idea of Mihawk's physicals. That's when Zoro realized there was a ridiculous gap between him and the world's strongest swordsman. Despite Zoro being ridiculously strong, and can even flick Zoro away with a baby knife. Basically what I'm saying, if Mihawk was put in this situation due to him being physically stronger than Zoro, he should be able to lift a building as well if he really wanted to. Matter of fact, these baboons or monkey beings, when they're in the presence of Mihawk, they actually get scared, letting you know they know what time it is. He would even use his knowledge with a blade to cut cucumber. You know what? Let me stop. In a later arc, there was this being known as Das Bones, Mr. One, that gave Zoro a pretty decent fight. He was a being that was literally made out of steel and can change any part of his body into a blade. Zoro did end up getting strong enough to actually defeat this being, but it took high difficulty, while when Mihawk fought this same guy in a later arc, he treats him like a child, which makes sense with the narrative about him being stronger than Zoro, you know. This guy that he just cut down with ease, one shot, Mr. One, was giving Zoro major issues during his time period. One can say this is swordsmanship and his cutting power and stuff put together when it comes to how strong he is. When Zoro charged him, he completely messed him up. We've seen Zoro match beings that can produce cutting power that can slice entire buildings. Not to mention we've seen Zoro cut entire chimneys or buildings and stuff of that such. So it's obvious that Mihawk can do similar or greater. Look how shocked Zoro is, so it's obvious if Mihawk wanted to, even with a small knife, I would say he can definitely slice an entire building apart with ease, honestly. And there's no point in you trying to shoot him. He has fighting speed, using the sword with such grace. Zoro was impressed on how he used his sword. It shows his fighting speed. You can't really speed blitz him if you're too slow, obviously. Buggy, a reoccurring character, he deflects his attacks over and over again. I mean, he does know how to use that ability known as Haki, like I told you earlier. So one could say that's the reason why he's able to casually avoid attacks like this. He already knows you're about to do it before you do it, one could say, which can increase his fighting speed or perception, dodging Luffy here. It's funny how the manga panels literally highlight his fighting speed. They show his eyesight and Luffy's moving like a blur, but Mihawk still can see him. Fast enough to hit and track Luffy. Luffy at this point in the story was able to speed blitz somebody like one of the government agents in the CP9 that was ridiculously fast, where they can vanish before your very eyes when it comes to their speed. Examples like this on how he can literally vanish faster than eyesight. Luffy still can blitz this same being, but Mihawk's reflexes are too fast for this guy. Luffy, even though he's this fast. Look when Luffy was about to blitz him here. Mihawk's perception was so great that Luffy predicted if he would have put his arm out, he would have sliced Luffy's arm off on the spot. Luffy even straight up said it, so you know Mihawk's got fighting speed with that blade. Blitzes past these beings, cuts to both of them with speed and cutting power. Mihawk is stronger and faster than Luffy when it comes to reflexes. Luffy, even back in these earlier days, can dodge actual light beams without being hit. These pacifista technology creations are shooting beams that are based on Kizaru's laser. Kizaru's ability was developed into this. They're shooting beams of light, and Luffy at this point in the series, Mihawk was stronger and faster than at this point in the series. This is the beginning of the time skip right here in this particular situation. And if Luffy can do this and Mihawk's still considered faster and stronger at this point, it's obvious Mihawk has fighting speed, because when Luffy, before the time skip was trying to blitz him and he was going to cut his arms off, it kind of lets you know how fast Mihawk has to be in raw speed. So he can either swing his sword in fighting speed close to light speed or light speed within that ranges if he's even faster than Luffy at this time period. You guys remember the Whitebeard pirates? He has a whole bunch of crew of beings that are pretty strong too, like the swordsman known as Vista, the swordsman on the Whitebeard pirates. At the bare minimum, he's at least Vice Admiral level, meaning that Vista can use Haki. He's blocking an attack from a Vice Admiral here, so it lets you know how strong Vista is. Not to mention, look how big this being is. Just from the size of him alone, you know he's strong. Like here, for example, I have my own little Navy chart. This can give you an idea of how high a Vice Admiral is on the power level food chain. Before the big time skip, this is an example of what Vice Admirals did to the main character Luffy at the time. Mihawk actually clashed with a being that he has respect when it comes to swordsmanship for. Mihawk can fight against beings like this casually. Really hard to get an idea of how hard he was actually fighting here, but he did say he would rather postpone this fight against Vista for another time and let you know Vista's level to get approval from Mihawk. He'll use his sword by literally riding on it. So superhumanly strong, he can swing his sword so hard. It's almost like he can do long range attacks, like cutting air, long range beam type looking slashes that can cut you, which is why he can cut you from far away. Swordsman skill plus his strength and Haki, all that blah, blah, blah put together. It's probably how he's able to do this. It's showing like this, like how he's not even close to Luffy really, and he still can hit him with sword slash, cuts from far away, long range wind splitting attacks basically, sword slashes. This can give you an idea of his cutting power, because look what it's doing to the ice below. But Mihawk's way over here, Whitebeard's right here. His sword slash was able to travel all this distance. Somebody that's not used to this type of stuff would think he has superpowers when he really doesn't. It's just that his cutting power slash can extend that far, and he can make long range attacks from very far away. Ships in One Piece. Just to give you an idea of Mihawk's cutting power, he can cut up a big ship this big. Look how big it is compared to the Baratier. He can cut it up. So basically, after Mihawk's done with you, he will leave your ship like chopped bread. And I would like to note that he be murking folk just to kill time. Boredom. By the way, Mihawk took out a fleet of 50 ships and 5,000 pirates by himself. The one who destroyed our fleet of 50 ships. You know, Mihawk. He's truly a monster with a blade. Even if it's like a whole fleet of ships, if you're not strong enough, he will slice multiple ships one by one if he wishes. An entire fleet decimated. Mihawk does the same kind of stuff in non-canon stuff too. Like in this movie, for example, there was these little ships you see right here, but then you see this gigantic ship right behind it with all these different beings on it, and Mihawk with ease can slice stuff like this in half. You know, it's common stuff. By himself, just floating next to it. I'd honestly say this is still an oversimplification on his might. I've already brought up Luffy before. Let me bring him up again. Luffy considers this guy too strong to deal with in this particular situation. So even by Luffy Luffy standards, during this time of the period, he considers Mihawk strong. Remember how strong Luffy is? He's the main character. Luffy at this time period at least has the punching power strong enough to punch through a city block. Like, you can literally see the buildings in the area lifting up. Luffy's punching through this mass, devastating a city block, multiple buildings worth of buildings. Luffy could do at this time, and Luffy considers Mihawk strong. And remember, Mihawk is way above Luffy at this point, so him being able to slice through all of this at the same time is definitely believable. We've seen him level ships. I would even say he can level this many ships at once with his black blade if he really felt like it, honestly. It makes sense when he can just make all this water do all of this with the swipe of his sword. A whole bunch of frozen ice with a sword swipe without even having to be near the ice itself. He can swipe all of this apart to show his cutting power. This proves that his cutting power can slice big icebergs, or one could say, but I still think that's the tip of the iceberg. It's just a lot of speculation with him, but let's be honest. If Zoro around the Dressrosa arc could cut mountain men, I definitely think Mihawk's way above this version of Zoro that was during the Dressrosa arc. Meaning, if Mihawk was in Dressrosa and he was put in the same situation, I definitely believe Mihawk could do the same when it comes to cutting mountain men. Folks have calculated this to be in the megatons, 40, 30 megatons nuclear bomb type centric ranges. I mean, you got One Piece movies that are technically not canon. Some debate if 3D 2Y is actually canon or not, but I definitely think this is something he would do in canon. He could do it in canon if he felt like it. This big old cannonball, Mihawk showed his cutting power blade, be able to do a long range slash attack to blow it up. Even if it isn't canon, I think this is something Mihawk totally could do in the lore, based on his narrative and writer intent of him being the strongest swordsman. And we've seen other characters in this universe slice mountainside stuff apart too many times. In this movie that's definitely not canon, we've seen Mihawk appear in the same movie with Zoro when Zoro used his swordsmanship and cutting power to slice this gigantic meteor down the middle. Look how big the meteor was compared to the island, so it was pretty freaking massive. It's like they wanted to imply Mihawk is still above him here in this particular movie event, because the meteor was still big and it got split. It was thanks to Mihawk, who cut it up into itty bitty pieces, pretty much taking away Zoro's shine for this moment, where there are smaller pieces to where it won't actually put nobody in danger. And then he said, that's all I'm doing for the day and bounce. But yeah, this is non-canon. I just wanted to throw this in here because those feats are cool for Mihawk. You know, with all jokes aside, I think there's clear writer intent and evidence, basically, in canon stuff that he could slice an island down the middle and split it if he really wanted to. In the world of One Piece, in the military, in the Marines, one could say the higher ranked you are, the stronger you are. You can get an idea of how strong a character is based on their rank. Admirals are ridiculously high on the food chain. Yonkos, one could say emperors of the sea, are some of the strongest pirates in the world, obviously. Shanks, red-haired Shanks, is one of these beings. Just to give you perspective on how powerful these Yonkos is, Whitebeard, who was considered the strongest man in the world at the time, was able to actually take down an admiral, with some difficulty, of course. So in the world of pirates, there's a lot of beings that use a weapon, one of them being a Yonko like Shanks. And guess what? This is somebody that stopped the war, stopped an attack from an admiral, and he's considered a rival to a freaking Yonko like this. Nobody is about to be like under Yonko level being a friendly rival to somebody like Shanks this strong in swordsmanship. Shanks is literally one of the strongest beings in this world. Have you come for a fight? And Mihawk says he doesn't want to fight him with one arm, saying, is Shanks not a challenge for him with a blade no more in pure swordsmancraft? Keep in mind that some of the strongest pirates in history have some absurd bounties. One way you can understand somebody's power level, sort of, is to understand their bounty a little bit. You know that he's a rival to Shanks, and his bounty is a 4 billion bounty. Mihawk's bounty is 3 billion, so it's lower than Shanks, but keep note, he doesn't even have really a crew, but Shanks has like a legit full pirate crew and stuff. But the fact that Mihawk would be chilling on this small little boat raft thingy. So yeah, he's strong by himself, really. There's like a common pattern in One Piece. Every time two Yonkos clash their swords with Haki and everything put together, when they clash, they usually split the clouds or split the heavens themselves, they say in the show. Beings that are considered emperors have this raw power to do this. When the main character Luffy himself finally got on his level, he was able to do this against another emperor named Kaido when they clash punches or blows. Notice how one of the beings that's able to do this is this being known as red-haired Shanks. One can make an argument. We haven't necessarily seen Mihawk do the splitting the sky feat, but maybe if we see him fight Shanks currently, Shanks and Mihawk clashing, there's a possibility that Mihawk also can split the sky if he clashed with a Yonko. We just haven't seen him do it. What do you think? Your opinions are more than welcome. It was implied that Mihawk could have easily taken the title of Emperor, but he didn't want to, because he just wants to live in peace and just chill or whatever. So instead, they had Buggy take the title and just put him in the forefront instead of him being in the spotlight, letting him take the heat. Not to mention, It was even stated that he has greater sword skills than the Emperor Shanks himself. So there's heavy implications that he's already Yonko level. He just don't want the spotlight. Matter of fact, Mihawk is so strong when it comes to being a swordsman and just strength, reputation, or whatever throughout the seas that even top tier beings like Shanks, even though he has one arm, he's still a top tier being. And Mihawk considers this version of him not worthy of battling him with one arm. He only wants to battle Shanks with both his arms, or one could say at his best. Even though Shanks, despite him having one arm, is still strong enough to split the skies and clash with the strongest man in the world at the time, known as Whitebeard, Mihawk considers Shanks with one arm not worth his time, apparently, when it comes to sword fighting. That says a lot about Mihawk's power, despite Shanks still being strong with one arm still. But at the end of the day, everybody, all of this could be just me. How strong do you think Mihawk is? Do you think he can level 3 or 4 or 5, 6 islands? Our country? What do you think? But before I get going, thanks for the donations, everybody. Helps out a lot. Respect the world's greatest swordsman in One Piece. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.